Hey, how you doing? Hope you're hanging in there. This time I'm going to go over this worksheet. I hope you can see it. Yeah, that worksheet. Again, you should have it in the packet I sent home with you. I'll read the answers again. If you haven't tried it yet, maybe do it first and then look at these answers. But in this worksheet, I have mixed together classical and operant conditioning examples. And so the first thing I want you to do is go through each one and, and decide, is this example a classical conditioning example or is this an example of operant conditioning? And what's the question you're going to ask yourself for keeping these two apart? Come on. Is the behavior voluntary or involuntary? If it's involuntary, then you know it has to be classical, okay? If it's voluntary, it has to be operant. So this is another situation where you want to go through and look and see what is the behavior that's changing from the beginning of the scenario to the end and underline that, okay? And then ask yourself, is it voluntary or involuntary? So do that first, go through the 10. And, again, pause and try this, okay? Hopefully you're pausing. Okay. So the first one, every time someone flushes a toilet in the apartment building, the shower becomes very hot and causes the person to jump back. Over time, the person begins to jump back automatically after hearing the flush before the water temperature changes. Okay. So it's jumping back, which sounds voluntary, but it's jumping back because scorching hot water is being dumped on you, and that's really involuntary. Okay, so that's a classical conditioning one. Number 2, your father gives you a credit card at the end of your first year in college because you did so well. As a result, your grades continue to get better in your second year. Okay, so what's the behavior? It's your grades. Voluntary, involuntary, voluntary, so it's operant conditioning. Third one, your car has a red flashing light that becomes annoying. That blinks annoyingly if you start the car without buckling the seatbelt. You become less likely to start the car without buckling the seatbelt. Okay, so what's the behavior that's changing from the beginning of the scenario to the end of the scenario? Obviously, it's buckling the seatbelt. Is that voluntary, involuntary? It's voluntary, so this one's operant. Okay. 4, you eat a new food and then you get sick because of the flu. However, you develop a dislike for the food and feel nauseated whenever you smell it. Nausea, involuntary, classical. An individual receives frequent injections of drugs which are administered in a small exam room at a clinic. The drug itself causes increased heart rate, but after several trips to the clinic, simply being in a small room causes an increased heart rate. Okay, so behavior, heart rate. Okay, it is involuntary, so it's got to be classical. A lion in the circus learns to stand up on a chair and jump through a hoop to receive a food treat. Okay, just getting on a chair, jumping through a hoop, voluntary on the part of the lion, operant. A professor has a policy of exempting students from the final exam if they maintain perfect attendance during the quarter. His students' attendance increases dramatically. Behavior, attendance, voluntary, operant. You check the coin return slot in a pay telephone. You guys probably don't even know what that is. And find a quarter. You find yourself checking other telephones over the next few days. Good luck finding some of those. Okay, so what's the behavior that's changing? It's whether you're checking the phone or not. It seems to be on the increase, and it's voluntary. Okay, so it's operant conditioning. 9. This one throws people sometimes. Your hands are cold, so you put your gloves on. In the future, you are more likely to put your gloves on when it's cold. Okay. Talks about cold, makes it sound like classical, but the behavior is putting on your gloves, which is the voluntary behavior, so that's operant. And then last one, I think we talked about in class. John Watson conducted an experiment with a little boy named Albert in which he paired a white rat with a loud, startling noise. Albert now becomes startled at the sight of the white rat. What's the behavior? Being startled, involuntary, classical. Okay? So now we're going to go back through, and if it is an operant example, you're going to tell me whether it's positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, or negative punishment. Okay, and you have to do those 3 steps I taught you for that to go well. Okay, I need to fix my hair. There, that's better. Okay, so, and if it's classical, you're going to tell me the unconditioned stimulus and the unconditioned response, and then the conditioned stimulus and the conditioned response. Okay, so let's go through those again and pause here if you want to work on that. Every time someone flushes a toilet in the apartment building, the shower becomes very hot, causes the person to jump back. Over time, the person begins to jump back automatically when hearing the flush before the water temperature changes. Okay, our unconditioned response, remember I said start at the end, is jumping back. It's being involuntarily and biologically caused by an unconditioned stimulus, which in this case is hot water. Okay, the conditioned stimulus is the flush that gets associated with the hot water, and in the end, the flush by itself will cause jumping back, and that's the conditioned response. Second one, your father gives you a credit card at the end of your first year of college because you did so well. As a result, your grades continue to get better in your second year. Okay, good grades, obviously voluntary. They're on the increase. Okay, so you should be thinking reinforcement. Okay, and he added a credit card, so that's positive reinforcement. Okay, 3, your car has a red flashing light that blinks annoyingly. If you start the car without buckling the seatbelt, you become less likely to start the car without buckling the seatbelt. Okay, the behavior's buckling the seatbelt, voluntary, operant, on the rise. Okay, so reinforcement, and is that because it gives you something good or something bad is taken away? Well, the annoying light or whatever it is goes away, so this is negative reinforcement. Remember I said if it's confusing and you missed it, it's probably negative reinforcement. Okay, you eat a new food, you get sick because of the flu. However, you develop a dislike for the food and feel nauseated whenever you smell it. Okay, unconditioned response is nausea. What's biologically causing that? The flu. Conditioned with the taste of a new food, a smell, I guess they're talking about here, the smell of a new food gets associated. So the smell is a conditioned stimulus that got paired with the flu, and now it causes nausea, your conditioned response. An individual receives frequent injections of drugs which are administered in a small exam room at a clinic. The drug itself causes increased heart rate, but after several trips to the clinic, simply being in the small room caused an increased heart rate. Again, classical. The unconditioned response is a heart rate, increased heart rate. What is really causing that biologically? The unconditioned stimulus is the drug. The drug got paired with a small room, so the small room is the conditioned stimulus, and the conditioned response is increased heart rate. Okay. A lion in a circus learns to stand on a chair, jump through a hoop to receive a food treat. So that's operant. They're trying to increase the behavior, so it's reinforcement. By giving something good, a treat, that's positive, they're adding. And it's also a primary reinforcement because it fulfills a biological need for the lion. Okay, 7. A professor has a policy of exempting students from the final exam if they maintain perfect attendance. The behavior is attendance. They want to increase that, so it's reinforcement. And if you do it and you do it right, in the end, something bad gets taken away. So that's negative reinforcement. You check the coin return slot on a pay telephone and find a quarter. You find yourself checking telephones over the next few days. So the behavior is checking the phone. It's on the increase. It's got to be reinforcement because occasionally you get a coin. That's positive reinforcement. Okay. But take a moment and think about this. It is also a good example of one of the 4 schedules of reinforcement. So is this fixed ratio, variable ratio, fixed interval, variable interval? Pause the video maybe for a second and think about that. And the answer is variable ratio. Okay, it's unpredictable when you're going to get a quarter, but the more you do the behavior in the long run, the more quarters you'll get. So it's based on the number of behaviors, not on just waiting a certain amount of time. Okay. 9, your hands are cold, so you put gloves on. In the future, you are more likely to put gloves on when it's cold. Okay. So the behavior is putting on gloves. It's on the rise, so it must be reinforcement. And again, is it giving me something good or is it taking away something bad? It is taking away the cold, so that is negative reinforcement. Okay. And then the last one we've done before, Watson conducted an experiment with a boy named Albert in which he paired a white rat with a loud startling noise. Albert now becomes startled at the sight of the white rat. Okay, so the unconditioned response is being startled. The true cause of it is the loud noise. The white rat is the conditioned stimulus that got paired with it and now causes the startle, the conditioned response. And remember in the Albert one, this was also a great example of generalization because poor messed up baby Albert was afraid of like Santa Claus masks and fuzzy white rabbits and all that. So generalization, he went beyond responding to just white rats to other things that reminded him of the original stimulus. Okay, I've done too many videos today, so I'm going to pause for now. And when I come back, I'll be doing the memory chapter and going over that worksheet.